At short notice, as you know, it's election time in India, and we've been trying to get Ashwani to come and say a few words here, but he, as he pointed out, didn't know until he boarded the plane that he could actually make it. But I appreciate his coming, and I appreciate you all coming. India has done pretty well for itself in the global economic crisis when you compare it to its Western peers, and even when you compare it to its Eastern peers like China. And we would like to understand what makes that happen. We would also like to understand how India will deal with the challenges that still continue. Would the 6% growth, which is now looks more like the number, continue? How long? Would India be able to get back to the 9% growth, and when? There has been a decline in inflation, which is always welcome, but does that have its deflationary risk? How is a country which is used to growing employment, people jumping from jobs every few months to get a higher salary, dealing with pink slips, layoffs and retrenchments? The Indian stock market has shown a great rally recently. Is it a rally? It's a bear market rally, or is it the beginning of a new bull market? What are the steps that the government has taken and will take, and whether they've been effective or not? And I thought there's nobody better to give us a rundown on these issues than our India's Minister for State for Commerce and Industry, Dr. Ashwani Kumar. I'll now ask Ashwani to say a few words to you.
Well, you raised a number of pertinent questions, but let me just start by saying that we recognize that these are difficult times. Not only difficult times, these are extraordinarily difficult times, because never in the history of the last 50 years did the world see the kind of slowdown that it has seen today. As I said to the US-India Business Council yesterday, we had 3 major recessions in the last 50 years. One was in 71, the other in 82, and the third in 1991. But we saw, for instance, in all of those slowdowns, stagnation of international trade, but we never saw a contraction of international trade by as much as 12% on a global basis, which is extraordinary. It's never happened before. We have seen the largest economy of the world, namely the American economy, contract on an annualized basis at 6.1%. A $14 trillion economy contracting by 6.1%. That is a message. We have never seen, for instance, job losses in various countries to the extent at which we now see. And therefore, the crisis is for real. That's for starters. We cannot be oblivious to the fact that something much more fundamental and something much more gigantic will have to be done in order to reclaim the good times of the past. Having said that, I've always believed that human ingenuity is such that it can cope with any crisis, and that every crisis is an occasion for the assertion of leadership and for reclaiming the possibilities that exist and which emerge in a crisis. No country, in my view, is better placed to convert this crisis into an opportunity than the United States of America. I have been a firm believer of the fact that if the largest economy of the world, driven by entrepreneurship of an extraordinary kind, can't get it right, then no one else can get it right. I do not subscribe to the view that the center of economic power has shifted to any other country. It may have shifted to regions, and I do believe that the center of economic power has shifted to Asia in terms of the purchasing power parity of its people, in terms of the consumption demand driven by Asian countries, in terms of the possibilities that exist, because those economies are still not saturated economies, except for China, which is nearing saturation. We have extraordinary figures coming out of India. We grew for the last 5 years at an average annual growth rate of 8.6%. We clocked 9.1% in 2007-2008, and despite the global economic slowdown, we grew at the rate of 6.5% in 2008-9. An almost $1 trillion economy growing at 6.75 to 7% in 7 years or in 8 years would be nearly $2 trillion economy. But our target is to revive the economic growth at about 8%, 8% plus. It's not going to happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen in 2010, but I think towards the end of 2010 and early 2011, the process of revival will start. I say so for the following reasons. The fundamentals of the Indian economy are absolutely sound. 1 billion people, of whom 350 million people have the same purchasing power as the middle classes in Europe or the United States. With 10 to 15 million people being added to our middle classes, again defined in terms of purchasing power parity every year. We have the most formidable statistics of a young India in the making, a young India on the rise. We are home to 20% people, 20% of the world's population under the age of 24. 58% of our population is in the productive and working age group, and 70% of our billion people are below the age of 35. So the demographic dividend itself assures, by one estimate, 0.5 to 0.8% incremental growth year on year to our economy. We are told on high authority that 20% of, at least a 20% profit is being made by American companies that are operating in India on a net basis year on year. In terms of our competitiveness, we are informed that it takes even today 60% of the cost to establish a world-class manufacturing facility in India when compared to any other country in the world. We still have labor arbitrage compared not to the Western economies, but compared even to the low-cost countries in Southeast Asia. From the figures that I have read, our cost per hour of productive labor is $1.2 as compared to $2.1 in the Southeast Asian economies. In terms of human resource, India still remains unmatchable. That is our real asset. And that is the asset we are going to leverage. I have believed that we must refocus on manufacturing because 1% growth in manufacturing is 3% growth in the services sector. Our economic growth story is a little skewed in favor of the services sector, which accounts for about 56% of the GDP, which should not be at the cost of manufacturing and agriculture. Agriculture is reviving, but we need to increase and expand the manufacturing growth from the current levels of 11% to 17%, because we must then ensure that manufacturing contributes at least 25 to 30% to our GDP component in terms of I'm emphasizing on manufacturing because a country of 1 billion people needs goods. It needs people to buy those goods. We have the purchasing capacity, we have the consumption, we have the demand within the country, and therefore, until you produce more, you will not be able to sell more. So therefore, this cycle needs to be reactivated on an urgent basis. We have endless possibilities. The nuclear civil agreement between India and the United States has opened up huge possibilities which could run into billions and billions of dollars. Clean technologies, biotechnologies, nanotechnologies, foreign direct investment in infrastructure, roads, ports, airports, railways, power stations. All of that